Morning, all. All right, so I want to talk about the Ottawa Senators to start the day. I want to talk about the Sens is now with the new owner, although that sale still hasn't closed. I don't know how complicated this is, but I keep hearing, oh, it'll close, it'll close. We know Michael Andlauer is going to be the new owner, right? We know that sale will close. It just feels like it takes forever, but it's going to. He's going to be the new owner, and with the new owner, you likely get raised expectations, playoffs and beyond, and the idea of building a champion. And so in Ottawa, I think that's what Pierre Dorian's been trying to do. Not just like a quick little retool, get back into the playoffs, but build towards potentially winning a Stanley Cup. That should be the goal of every general manager in the league, right? Now, one thing that stands out to me with the Sens is DJ Smith. He's been behind the bench for a while. If the Sens get off to a slow start, the easiest move to make for a GM, and some would say maybe it's the wrong move sometimes, but the coach is always going to be the one that gets looked at when you want to make a change early on in the season. DJ Smith's record as coach: 120 wins, 139 regulation losses, and 32 overtime and shootout losses. One thing to keep in mind with Ottawa, their attendance moved up this year. They're back up to 16,757 fans on average in attendance. That is the highest attendance they've had since 2016-2017, the last season they went to the playoffs. So the fans clearly have bought in. They are happy with this team. The team only missed the playoffs by 6 points. They were above 500 for the first time since 2016-2017. So a winning team attracts fans. Who knew? And this is something that we've talked about for years. Now, what I've got here is I've got the lineup from their first game of last season, the lineup from their last game of last season, and then their likely lineup for the first game of this season. And I've got it with a question mark because we don't know. We haven't got into training camp yet, but likely, right? And part of what frustrates fans is when the lineup looks like it's probably set, you get into training camp, you get into the preseason, and there's a rookie that's doing really, really well, and then they get sent to the AHL, and it's why, but they're doing really well. And I'll come back to that. There's a really obvious answer for that. But anyways, their lineup for game one last year, DeBrincat, of course, he has exited the team. Holden has retired. Mott is no longer a member of the Ottawa Senators, and Austin Watson's gone as well. So a lot of players are still here. Batherson, Brandstrom, Chabot, Giroux, Hamonic, Joseph, Kastelik, Kelly, Norris, Pinto, Sanderson, Stutzla, Kachuk, Zub, and of course goaltender Anton Forsberg, who's probably going to be the backup this year. Probably not going to get the starters minutes. Now, the lineup for game 82, a little bit different. Patrick Brown exits the team. DeBrincat, as mentioned before, is gone. Gambrell, no longer a part of the team. Gauthier, no longer a part of the team. Holden, as mentioned, retired. So you have a number of guys gone off the team. You've got Batherson still here. Brandstrom, we'll talk about Brandstrom a bit. Might as well talk about him here. Brandstrom, I think, has played well. He's advanced. I don't know if he's advanced as far as Ottawa would like him to. And so Brandstrom might be a trade option at some point over the near future. Giroux, Gwinnett, of course, younger player, still with the team. Not likely to be on the opening night roster. Joseph, Kastelik, Clevin, who came in towards the end of the season. Pinto, Sanderson, Sokolov in the lineup. Stutzla, Kachuk, Zub, and then Sogard was the goaltender of record for that final game of the season. So we look at their lineup for this year. Again, keeping in mind we haven't started training camp at the time I'm recording this, so we'll see. But in likelihood, you have Batherson, Brandstrom, Chabot, Chickering. Chickering, of course, not in Game 1 or Game 82. Game 1, he would have been in Arizona. Game 82, he was injured. And that's a storyline with Chickering. We'll talk about him. Giroux, Hamonic, Joseph, Kastelik, Kelly. Kubalik, of course, added in the trade for DeBrincat. McEwen brought in as a free agent. He'll be on the fourth line. Norris, Pinto, Sanderson, Stutzla. Tarasenko brought in as a free agent. Kachuk, Zub, and Korpisalo added in net. So some changes here. You get Kubalik in replacement for DeBrincat, but with the money you save not re-signing DeBrincat, you also bring in Tarasenko. I would think Kubalik and Tarasenko put together add up to more goals than DeBrincat would have if he'd stayed in Ottawa. And I say that because DeBrincat may very well find his goal scoring in Detroit a little bit better than he did in Ottawa. Sometimes it's just not a great mix. Now, keeping in mind this may very well not end up being the starting night lineup because you've got Ridley Gregg. Now, Greg, is he better off playing further down in the lineup? Is he going to win a top 6 job right out of training camp? Will he push somebody out of the lineup? Clevin, if you decide that your blue line has enough young guys out there and you want to, have that mix of veterans and young players, you can absolutely have Clevin in the AHL, keeping in mind that when we get into the preseason and they start sending guys down, every year there's that rage of, I can't believe that kid got sent down, but they don't need waivers. You don't want to waive a veteran, lose him for nothing to another team, potentially in your own division, wherever, it doesn't matter. So you lose that veteran player to keep that kid around, and then have an injury take place 2 weeks into the season where it would have been nice to have that veteran there, and then you could call that kid up as well. So it's roster management. It's a smart move, and I understand people get mad about it, and I expect that again this year. It happens every year that there's young players who look good and don't end up making the team, in part because they don't require waivers to be sent down. Jacob Bernard Docker, is this the year that he becomes a regular on this blue line? Or is Bernard Docker just not going to end up clicking at the NHL level? There's Igor Sokolov, as mentioned. Sokolov was in the Game 82 lineup. And Zach Ostapchuk, it feels like, has started to generate a lot of buzz around him. And again, we're just in the rookie camps and rookie tournaments, but it feels like there's some buzz there from Ottawa fans and from some media. And if that extends into the Ottawa organization as well, you might make things a little more difficult. Now, of course, on a PTO is Josh Bailey. Maybe Bailey signs a contract and ends up being a 13th forward, so maybe he becomes that first guy that goes into the lineup if somebody gets hurt. I think Bailey, at this point in his career, he can play third line. He can also play fourth, and it would make some sense if he was that extra forward. Experienced veteran depth is always good to have, and Ottawa has that. And so it'll be interesting to see who actually plays in that Game 1 lineup, who ends up being the healthy scratches, your extra forwards and defensemen, and how they navigate the salary cap through all this. Because they really don't have cap space to add anybody else. So you have to kind of hope that this lineup works, everything hits, and you get off to a really good start. Because if they don't, as mentioned, that's going to put pressure on the coach, whether or not he sticks around. And then you've got a really tough conversation with Pierre Dorion as well, if you're Michael Andlauer. Because it's been a while now. You might be expecting some playoffs, and you might want an explanation from your general manager about why not. So when Pierre Dorion's coming out and saying to the media, I don't want to, put too much pressure on it. I'm not going to make any crazy assertions for what I think this team's going to do. That may not work with the new owner. It might. Maybe the new owner says, you know what, you're right. We'll give it some more time. We'll let this percolate. We'll see how it goes. Or maybe he says, I think we're going to have to look in another direction. You never know what an owner is going to be like when they take over. Now, looking at individual players on the team, there were certain ones I wanted to look at. Stützle took that absolute next step last year. He goes from 22 goals and 36 assists, 58 points, to 39 goals, 51 assists, 90 points. Stützle can hit 100 goals. In his career, he'll hit 100 goals, not in a season. That's highly unlikely. 100 points, though, in a season, he could do that. 40 goals, absolutely, he was only 1 goal away. So Stützle, I think, is going to continue to improve, as will Tkachuk. He goes from 30 goals, 37 assists, 67 points, to 35 goals, 48 assists, 83 points. So while, yes, the end of last season was a bit of a disappointment for Ottawa fans, you're still seeing that progression from young players. Josh Norris is the wild card in all this. So 2021-2022, he had 35 goals, 20 assists for 55 points in 66 games. This past season, he only played 8 games. 2 goals, 1 assist, 3 points. If Norris is healthy, if he can get back to, I would just say 30 goal form, because 35 goals in 66 games, that's like 40 plus goal form, right? So if he can get back to 30 goal form, I think that helps a lot. Again, with the exit of DeBrincat, you're going to need guys to score some goals, and I don't think Ottawa's going to have a problem with that. And Ridley Gregg, his 20 games when he came in, he was pretty solid, 2 goals, 7 assists, 9 points. So again, Gregg ends up over here. Maybe you see Kelly or Kastelik end up over here, but you don't want a skilled guy playing too far down in the lineup either. So we'll see what they do when it comes to Gregg, because his development is really, really important. I'm also understanding now. I've got it spelled right there. I have it spelled wrong here. Pretty sure there was a G-R-I-E-G. There's a reason I'm putting that in there, and that would be wrong. Anyways, Batherson. Batherson had a good year, though, when you look at the previous season. In 46 games, he had 17 goals, 27 assists, 44 points. This past year, 22 goals, 40 assists for 62 points, but he played every game. So he played 36 more games, and he only had 18 more points. So I think they'll want a little bit more from Batherson. But again, if he can get maybe to a 25 goal mark, I think they're going to be happy with that. Again, the return of Norris should take some pressure off other players. And Chabot. Now, whether you see Chabot as one of the best defensemen in the league, I do. Chabot, 59 games in 2021-2022, 7 goals, 31 assists, 38 points. This past season, 68 games, 11 goals, 30 assists, 41 points. He plays a lot of minutes. So, as I mentioned when Sanderson signed his contract extension, you now have a team where Chabot and Sanderson are the anchors on that blue line. And if Chabot can stay healthy, that would go a long way to getting Ottawa into the playoffs. And, of course, for Sanderson, if he can just play as well as last year and just crank it up just a little bit, yeah, I think they have an excellent blue line. Shane Pinto is one that I think is interesting. So, 2021-2022, he plays 8 games, just the 1 assist. He was projected as the third-line center. Then the Norris injury happens, and it pushes Pinto up the lineup a bit. Plays all 82 games this past season, 20 goals, 15 assists, 35 points. Pinto, I think, is probably going to be a 40, 45-point player throughout most of his career. That being said, there's still talent there. He's still young. We'll see whether or not he has that next year. And then there's Jacob Chickering. So I mentioned that you've got Sanderson, you've got Chabot, and how important these guys are on the blue line. Chickering, huge, and he needs to stay healthy as well. 2020-2021 was a big year for him. He plays all 56 games, 18 goals, 23 assists, 41 points. So one of the beasts of the Coyotes blue line that year, and just great hockey. 2021-2022, bit of a fall off, just 47 games played though, because he does tend to get injured. 7 goals, 14 assists, 21 points. Last year with Arizona, he played 36 games, 7 goals, 21 assists, 28 points. Of course, controversially, Arizona was holding Chickering out of the lineup until a trade. But when you see how often he gets injured, it makes sense. Goes to Ottawa, plays 12 games, 2 goals, 3 assists, 5 points. His play did not impress nearly as much in Ottawa as it had in Arizona previously. So we'll see how well Chickering plays right out of the gate this year. And again, he needs to stay healthy. He's only played 95 games over the last 2 seasons. So that's problematic. But again, you've got Sanderson and you've got Chabot, very good defenseman on that blue line, and you've got some good depth there. So if Chickering were to get hurt, you've got Clevin, you've got Bernard Docker. Lassie Thompson's not on the board. He's 23, but he's still in the system as well, and maybe he comes up and gets some games this year too. So what's interesting to me with Ottawa is their overall numbers aren't bad. Their power play was 8th in the league at 23.5%. Their penalty kill was 14th at 80.1%. So their special teams were good. Their shots per game, they took 33.5 shots per game. They allowed 31.4. So the overall numbers aren't bad. Their hits per game, 27.67, which was second, or hits per 60 minutes. Their blocks per 60 minutes, 15.15, 13th. So their scoring, not bad. Their special teams were good. Their hits, they're a hitting team. Everything's kind of here. It's just a matter of putting it all together. And one player to keep an eye on, I think Brady Tkachuk's one to keep an eye on. He's talked a lot about, competing with his brother, and if he decides I'm going to compete with my brother, who knows? That competitive edge that you have when your last name's Tkachuk can go a long way. So maybe Tkachuk hits 90 points, maybe Stützle hits 100, and maybe this team can score enough points that they can overcome some defensive miscues here and there and impress. But I guess the question is, when you look at the lineup here, and you look at potential lineup for the start of this season, how improved is it? Can they get off to a better start? And so I pass that question along to you. To me, I do think that this is a lineup that has more depth. I think this is a lineup that's going to be able to score. A lot of it, I think, is going to depend on the health of Norris and whether or not Chickering can get off to a really good start. But I do think it's a good team. Are they better than last year? Are they going to make the playoffs? That is the grand question. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.